we're going to get internet anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to push on. Yep. Okay, well, we'll get going anyways. Welcome to today's, which one are we on here? Sewage Commission meeting. And we'll start by acknowledging that we're on the unceded territories of the Comox First Nation. And with that, we'll move straight into management report. Sewage Commission management report dated June 2019 for receipt.
Second.
And are there any questions or thoughts about that? I don't see any, so all in favor? And that's unanimous. And we'll move right into number 1, Sewage Management Advisory Committee minutes.
Second.
And is there any conversation about that? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's unanimous. And number 2, discussion surrounding requests and concerns made by the Curtis Road Residents Association, the delegation from May 14th, and we've got a report here. And I'll pass it over to our CAO.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. And Chris LaRose is here to provide a presentation of his report and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Russell. Through the Chair to members of the Commission. I prepared a brief presentation just to help guide me through a summary of the staff report on your agenda. So on April 16th, the Curtis Road Residents Association made their first delegation to the Sewage Commission, highlighting 2 primary areas of concern. Continued concern about odor from the facility, specifically from the bioreactors, and the location of the equalization basin that will be built this year. On May 14th, staff presented a report addressing those concerns, and the Sewage Commission passed motions directing staff to develop a landscape plan for the EQ basin berms, consult with the CRRA on development of a communications protocol, and to undertake follow-up odor modeling of the facility in advance of a recommendation later this year. Also at the May 14th meeting, the CRRA made a second delegation. So the report on your agenda today summarizes their concerns and requests and staff's response. So the first request made by the CRRA in their second delegation on May 14th was that the Sewage Commission move to adopt the Ontario odor standard for the facility. So the 2016 RWDI model, so just a reminder, RWDI was the consulting firm that we hired in 2015 and 2016 to undertake odor modeling of the facility. So in 2016, their modeling concluded that the facility at that point had emissions that were resulting in a predicted concentration of about 12 times the Ontario standard at some of the nearby sensitive receptors. And they predicted that with odor upgrades at the facility, that would be dropped down to approximately 2.5 times the Ontario standard. So we've initiated a follow-up odor study, which is now underway to confirm the performance of this latest phase of odor upgrades at the facility. And attached to this report is a recommendation that we be directed to review odor standards across Canada, so provincial standards across Canada in the absence of a standard here in BC, and then also voluntary standards that have been set by other jurisdictions in BC, and then to report back to the Commission. The second request from the CRA was that Area B be provided some type of representation on the Sewage Commission. And I just want to point you towards the next report on your agenda, prepared by the CVRD Legislative Services Group, which responds to this request. The third was that the Sewage Commission move immediately to cover the bioreactors. Staff plan to bring back 3 pieces of analysis and study work in September to inform a decision on this very matter. So those 3 pieces are the follow-up odor study, which has been initiated, engaging the same consultant that did the previous work, RWDI. The second piece is an engineering study confirming the required upgrades if we were to cover the bioreactors, and the associated updated capital costs. And the third is the analysis into the odor standards. So those 3 pieces will be brought forward back at the same time to inform that direction forward, or recommendations on a path forward. And in our view, the delay inherent to doing this work, so that 2 or 3 month delay from now must be weighed against a much better informed decision. The fourth is relocating the EQ basin to the northwest corner of the property. So essentially on the other side of the property from the Curtis Road side of the property. So per our last report to the Commission in May 14th, staff tendered the project in late May. So we signaled the intent in that last meeting. So we did proceed with tendering of the project in late May. So subsequent to that, we received a letter from the CRRA highlighting concerns regarding risk to their groundwater and odor from the facility. And that letter is attached as Appendix A to your report. On May 27th, we responded to that letter. The CVRD staff responded to that letter, and that letter is attached as Appendix B. So we highlighted the following mitigation measures that will be implemented. So including regular inspection of the basin and the surrounding trees. So of the basin to ensure that that there had not been any punctures of the liner, and also of the trees to ensure that we identify any vulnerable trees before windstorms that could knock them down and cause a threat to the membrane. The use of double duty of the underdrain system to help detect leaks. Installation of 2 groundwater monitoring wells downslope from the EQ basin so that we can establish a baseline for water quality and use those wells to check water quality if there is any concern in the future. And then lastly, and this is to address the odor, that the EQ basin will be flushed out after every use. So we've also made a commitment to develop and implement standard operating procedures to enshrine each of these mitigation measures into our standard practices. Ensure that regardless of staff turnover, these steps will be kept in place. The last request was that we implement an improved odor complaint recording and tracking, and this was the intent behind the development of the communications protocol, which, as per the motions from the last Sewage Commission meeting, were to be developed in consultation with the CRRA. So on May 21st, we did meet with the Residents Association to review the draft protocol. We received some verbal feedback at that meeting, and then about a week later, a letter summarizing some concerns with the protocol, largely relating to the unresolved issues, kind of relating to the previous requests highlighted in the presentation here. So I think, and then subsequently we met with the CRRA, including the Sewage Commission Chair, the Area B Director, and staff on June 5th to talk through a range of these issues and agreed to continue working on the protocol, but that it likely wouldn't be finalized until after these issues are resolved later in the fall, after we bring back the results of the study work and to inform those decisions. So next steps, we will award and build the equalization basin this summer. We'll be undertaking the follow-up odor study, the engineering cost study to confirm scope and cost for the work if we did proceed to go down that route. Undertake that analysis into the potential of establishing an odor standard for the facility, and then we plan to report back to the Commission in September with the results of this work. Are there any questions?
We have a question here from Director Swift.
Thank you, Chris. I'm just wondering about the EQ basin. If over time there are odor issues, is it possible to cover it after the fact?
I would say it's possible. I would just point out that that we anticipate the EQ basin to be used less than 1% of the time. That we will be spraying it out with fire hoses after every use to ensure there's no standing primary effluent in the basin. So that less than 1% of the time when it will be used will be during those really nasty stormy days of the year where we just wouldn't expect people to be outside and noticing an odor. Up until last year when we installed the covers over top of our existing primary tanks, those tanks were exposed to the atmosphere, round the clock, 365 days a year. And albeit we did decide to cover those, but given how infrequently this this basin will be used. We definitely don't anticipate the need to cover it. But in answer to your question, it is technically possible to cover it. It'd be quite challenging to put a structure over a basin of that size, but other jurisdictions with basins that are used more regularly have been known to use like a floating type cover. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the report. And I guess I should also extend a thanks to staff, because I know that you guys have done a lot of work on responding to the concerns, and I know this commission's very interested in dealing with these concerns as best as possible. I don't see any other questions. So on receipt, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. And we have the recommended motion from staff here to investigate and assess options for setting an odor standard. So we have a mover and a seconder with Grant and Hillian. Are there any questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Thanks very much. We'll move into number 3, Sewage Commission Electoral Area B participation, and I'll hand it over to staff.
Thank you very much. And commissioners, we do have internet service now, so you may be able to receive it on your tablets for the agenda. And Jake Martins will provide a summary of his report and answer any of your questions regarding Electoral Area B participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before the Commission is a brief staff report that's been provided in response to interest of the Commission to consider options respecting the participation of the Electoral Area B Director, and with particular interest in the odor coming from the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center, so discussions and decisions respecting that. As noted in the report, the Act does provide regional districts general discretion regarding voting entitlement and membership on bodies established for the administration and operation of services. So there's a spectrum of involvement that's been provided in the staff report. And it's noted that, of course, the general participation in Electoral Area B and other stakeholders has been referred to the Utilities Governance Study, but that does not preclude any decisions or direction at this point, but is up for consideration as far as next steps. There are a number of suggested resolutions there, depending on the desires of the Commission, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions in response to the report.
And we have Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report and the work involved. Could staff advise when we expect to hear back with any concrete recommendations from the governance study?
It's in process right now. James Warren is leading that project, and we anticipate in the early fall that to be back to the Commission as well as the Water Committee at that time.
All right, so if we decided to adopt some type of interim measure right now, we would be looking at that perhaps being in place over several months prior to further consideration in relation to the governance study?
Yes, and the purpose of this report was to provide you those options and at your request for your consideration if you wanted something in the interim.
Thanks.
So, we have a comment from Director Arnott.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to pull this up now, but in reviewing it, I do recall the report saying it is not common that we would have an outside area director part of a commission like this. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not commonplace, but it's not prevented by the Act or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I have another question then.
Yeah.
For the governance study then, is it being reviewed by CVRD staff, or is this a outside consultant who's doing that?
It was an outside consultant that prepared the report for us and presented that report. That was shared with Commission and Board, and now staff have been tasked to work with our stakeholders, the municipal staff, to look at various options and bring those back for your consideration. Mm-hmm. And it was felt that the appropriate way to do that was to drive that through the Commission so that the Commission can consider it in its own context, as well as through the Water Committee, because the interests of the Water Committee and the Commission may be separate and distinct in terms of moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and may I continue?
Mm-hmm,
okay,
absolutely,
yeah, thank you. I'm fearful that this could open up a precedent that maybe we do not want to go down in the future. Comox and Courtenay are the users of the sewage, there's no one in any areas that, area A, B, or C, that are participant of this. So I'm wondering, down the road, could another area director want to jump in on this? And then it just seems to me that it would dilute what we're trying to do. I'm not in favor of having an area director, with all due respect to the area directors. I'm not in favor of having them on the board. I think we need to leave it as is. In fact, I think maybe down the road we need to look at pulling the sewage right out of the regional district and having its own entity where Comox and Courtney are the ones who manage it. I think this outside influence is not a good thing in overall such a large part of the mandate of both Comox and Courtney.
Thanks for the comments. Director Hillian?
Thank you, Chair. I think that we've got a long-established challenge for the residents of Area B with this infrastructure located within their area. It's been an issue that this and previous boards have been dealing with for many years now. And I think in the efforts to resolve it, we're aware that there's also some challenges in both the trust and the relationship with the residents of the area. Despite what, in my observation during this recent period, has been significant efforts on the part of our staff to resolve the issue. I think that there is some value in, because of these challenges, providing voice to the Area B director on the Sewage Commission without vote. Until such time as the larger issues related to governance are in fact resolved through the study. Even if the study is presented in the fall, we don't know what direction it may recommend or what decisions may be made in relation to it. It could result in the separation that Director Arnott references, but we don't know that. In any case, I think it'll be a more fulsome opportunity for us to look at the larger issue of governance and in all its implications. But in the meantime, given the history and the ongoing challenges of management, I would certainly be prepared to support the Area B director having voice at the commission. I don't believe there should be any vote because I think we're essentially talking about the whole issue of taxation and representation and how that relates. But I'd be prepared to move that as an interim measure, the Area B director be invited to sit with voice but no vote on the Sewage Commission in relation to all matters concerning sewage infrastructure located in Area B until such time as this issue is looked at further through the governance study.
And there are a few more speakers, so let's hold that for a second if that's okay, and thanks for the comments, and we'll give it to Director Swift to speak to it.
Thank you. I am sympathetic to the concerns of the Curtis Road residents. As Director Hillian has pointed out, this has been a long-standing issue. But I believe they have been well represented by Jenny Steele and their Area B director through the avenues that are available to them. As outlined in the staff report, the direct staff engagement, the delegations to the commission, correspondence, open houses, workshops, public meetings, and Area B is extremely well represented at the liquid waste management plant. They have their director there, a resident from Croto Beach, and also one from around the sewage plant. So they do have voice, and they have a pretty large voice. To allow a member of the commission to have a vote when they don't contribute financially creates an imbalance in both allegiance and obligation. It doesn't make good governance sense to have voting members that don't pay. The pay-to-play model is there because it makes members accountable to the taxpayer. I also believe if we restrict it to just matters around the sewage plant, that it doesn't allow for a really fulsome understanding of the big picture. And the sewage system does require that kind of understanding. The Curtis Road residents represent a relatively small group, but their concerns are real. We need to work towards resolving the problems out there. I think as a commission, we know that. I don't think we should tamper with our governance model at this point. Do we need to change our governance in order for concerns to be heard? I don't think so. So I'm not going to be supporting this at this time. I look forward to the utility governance study that is coming in the fall, and we have the potential with perhaps having Area A come on, and I think, you know, those are the times when we can look at restructuring the commission. So at this point, I think we should hold off. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the comments. And Director Arnott, you have more to say?
Yeah, basically just to reiterate what Councillor or Director Swift had said, that I believe the voices have been heard loud and clear. I don't think it would make any difference to having a representative, whether they're voting or not, make a difference having them here. We have heard them. They've been having a lot of opportunities to be heard, and we've gone to great lengths to hear them. I think at this point we could be dealing with a bit of an emotional issue. Maybe we take a step back, allow the governance review study to work its way through, and talk about this later. But I won't be supporting that either. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks. They're all fair points. I would suggest that there might be some efficiencies to having a representative on the board. Instead of having to deal with an entire community, we could deal with simply one representative. I'd be inclined to have someone sit on the board as a non-voting member so that we could more easily and efficiently flush out these issues. And that's my view on it. And if it's an issue of the representative not having information on all matters, I mean, that's something we can consider as we move forward as the commission. We, take it with a grain of salt, if you will. But it's always possible to include the representative in all the matters, depending on whether that representative wants to come to every meeting. I don't know. I see Director Grant, you have your light on, so I'll pass it over to you.
Well, I'm in one of those weird positions here where I don't think that we should have a member on there from Area B. I think Maureen said it quite well. I think another issue is that when you have a smaller issue or a neighborhood like that, their interest is completely different than that of the larger board where we're looking after a sewer system for 45,000 people. Their interest is very smallish interest in just their neighborhood, and those goals are completely different. And so I think that you bring, as she said, an imbalance to the board, but I'm in a bit of an interesting position because I don't want to vote for this motion, and yet I don't like the motion the way he's presented it, because I would add to that perhaps it should be specific just to the odor control at Curtis Road.
Well,
rather than having them on for all the sewer issues.
And to be fair, we just sort of held off on the motion, so if we wanted to craft a different one, the floor is open.
Well, I don't want to. But I think if we do go down that road, that I think that it should be specific to that one issue.
And it looks like the participation entitlement options B would be all matters relating to odor issues. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't see any more lights on, so I'd suggest that that somebody move that the Sewage Commission permit the Director for Electoral Area B to participate as a non-voting member concerning item B, which is all matters relating to odor issues from the Water Pollution Control Center. No, we don't have one on the floor.
Motion to receive the report.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, we've received the report, and I'm sorry. So that motion's on the floor? So I'll call the question on receipt of the report, if that's okay with everyone. All in receipt? That's unanimous. And Director Hillian?
Thank you, Chair. I did say I'd be prepared to move the motion, and I remain prepared to do so. I do note that we have one member of the commission missing today, and I don't know whether, given some of the comments, that we may want to have some time to think about this and allow our 7th commission member to actually be present. Whether she's likely to be present or not, I have no idea. But again, I'm prepared to move the motion today if the table thinks it's appropriate. I'm also prepared to leave it stand till the next meeting if people think that that's more appropriate.
Right, and would that motion include both issues B and C, that being the odor issues and all the infrastructure located in Area B?
Well, it's my view that that B is essentially incorporated in C, and that C is in fact the key element, because what we're talking about is the infrastructure for the sewage that is located in Area B, which I would suggest the residents, through their representative, have a key interest in. I think voice but no vote is a significant distinction. I think it gives, as the chair has noted, an opportunity for the residents' concerns and their questions to be perhaps more focused, and for the board to be perhaps more effective and efficient in how they deal with it. But I think larger than that, it perhaps gives an opportunity for the trust to be rebuilt and for the residents to be assured that they do in fact have voice at the table. The vote is still not there, so the communities that put the money into the system are still the ones who vote on it. So to me, it seems like a reasonable compromise to improve a situation which, as I say, has been challenging. And then we have the promise of the governance study to come in the next 6 months or so that will perhaps give us a different avenue for solution.
And I wonder if staff can, if this could be on a certain timeline, you know, until such time as we consider this matter with the governance study, whenever that might be. Does that work? Is that reasonable? Yeah. So are you willing to make that motion now then, Director Hillian? Or do you want to think about it? You know what, we have another speaker, so.
Sure.
And that's Director Arnott.
Yeah, thank you. Just to Director Hillian then, where has there been no voice? It seems to me in the 6 months that I've been on this commission that we've heard loud and clear and very good delegations from the Curtis Road people. We've engaged them with yourself and staff. I believe the voice has been there, and we haven't had an area director. I'm left wondering where this idea of giving them a voice. They've already had one in the 6-7 months that I've been here.
Well, I'd have to agree with you that there has been a lot of attention given to the, recently anyways, to the Residents Association, but again, I'll point out that it could be a lot more efficient if we just dealt with it at the board, at the committee level, or the commission level, sorry, from one representative instead of perhaps the group as a whole.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Maybe we need less politicians on here, and maybe we need more professionals on here.
Yeah.
You know, we can have politicians and we can talk about this around and around we go, and it's clear that the emotions are driving some of these decisions. I think we need to take a step back from that, and we need to engage some more professionals. Maybe, you know, the CVRD folks, we have an outside person come in, but to add more politicians to anything is not a good idea. Well,
I don't like politicians either, so I'm with you. Director Grant.
Yeah, I guess I would argue the opposite of what you say, where it makes it more efficient. In my practice, it has made it less efficient. You get a special interest group that really focuses on their one issue, and it actually makes the board less efficient. So I would disagree with your point that this would make it more efficient.
Fair enough, Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to contest the idea that this issue is being driven by emotions. I think that if on the one hand we say that there are valid concerns being expressed and we mandate our staff to put the time and energy that they are into addressing those concerns, and then on the other hand say that the issue is being driven by emotions, to me those two positions don't jive. I think that as Director Swift noted, valid concerns have been expressed and action is being taken to address those concerns. Certainly the delegations have been heard, correspondence has been received, and but I guess what I would put across is we're talking about an enhancement of the democratic process here, where residents whose interests and whose quality of life has apparently been impacted by this infrastructure are asking for some type of formal say in regard to the decisions that are made. They're actually asking for a vote, which I don't agree with at this point. But I don't think it costs us anything to give them a formal voice, and I think it gives us the opportunity to perhaps address the issue at the board table rather than through constant delegations, which don't have the same ability to sit and engage in the actual discussion that takes place. I think that's where the advantage comes from having somebody with voice at the table. They can take part in the back and forth of the discussion, which influences the decision of the other members who then, in fact, vote on whatever the issues are at hand. And to me, it's simply a matter of expanding the democratic process to rebuild trust in the community and perhaps more effectively resolve the problems that we have at hand. Thank you.
And certainly, it being on an interim measure means that we get to revisit the issue in 6 months or however long it takes to get the governance to the Director Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I would echo much of what Councillor Hillian said. It seems to me not unreasonable to take a middle ground position where there is no vote, but there is a voice. And it's a voice on a specific time period, and it's a voice on a specific issue. And I would echo the words of the Chair that this is a more efficient way of exchanging information and ensuring it's there. And I don't think it's an emotional response. It's a response to a real thing, which can be measured. It's a quantifiable thing, the odor. And, overall, I think that, if we follow the logic that adding politicians to things makes them worse, then we should probably all just go home. And it's a nice day. It's not a bad option, but I think that having the voice, the very capable voice of the Area B director there would be a constructive addition. So, and I would say since this, there are obviously strong feelings about this, and we don't have the entire board here, I would support the idea of perhaps Councillor Hillian's resolution being heard at the next meeting.
Yeah, unless Director Grant, you feel like you might be able to support something like this, I'm inclined to let it go until we have a tiebreaker, because I don't want to create a rift here in the commission.
You're asking me to divulge my vote, which I don't want to do that. That will come at the
you can change your mind
appropriate
last
time.
minute, but
I could, but
do you have anything else to add?
no.
Would anyone like to? No, that's okay. Yep.
So are we just going to cherry pick meetings then whenever we think that we have enough people to pass something?
I'm going to see if we have someone to move the motion, option 1, and see how it goes. Is that okay with you?
You're the chair.
Is anyone willing to make that motion? That the Sewage Commission permit the Director of Area B to participate as a non-voting member in items relating to odor issues and sewage infrastructure, or something similar. Thanks. Do we have a seconder for that? I'll second it. Okay, any more discussion on that? All those in favor? Oh, hold on, I'm sorry.
Question, please.
Yeah, so is that clear to you, or I'll just say it again? So the motion is that the Sewage Commission permit the Director for Electoral Area B to participate as a non-voting member concerning all matters relating to odor issues from the Water Pollution Control Center and all matters concerning sewage infrastructure located in Area B until we discuss this again with the governance study. Is that clear? Are there any comments or questions about that motion? And that was moved by Director Grant and seconded by Director Arnott. Okay, I don't see any lights on, so all those in favor? And all those opposed? And that fails. Thanks for considering it. And just to be clear, are we allowed to bring that back at some point if the commission wishes?
You can certainly bring the report back at any time.
Okay. We'll move right on then to, unless someone has a different motion, I doubt they do. Item number 3, Sewage Commission, item number 1 under new business, the Village of Cumberland composting of dewatered biosolids. And do we have a report from staff on this? They want to explain?
I'll just ask Chris LaRose just to come forward and explain the requests that we've received, unsolicited request from the Village of Cumberland.
Thanks. Through the CEO and the chair. So yeah, this is a correspondence or request from the Village of Cumberland that we process their dewatered biosolids that are retrieved from or dredged from the bottom of their lagoons on a periodic basis. I believe it's every 7, 8, 9 years. So we have previously processed similar material from the village. So I think that their process is they dredge the bottom of the lagoons, put that material into some type of Gore-Tex sock, and then leave it on land and let the water slowly drain out of it, and that's how they tend to dewater it. They achieve a moisture content just a little bit higher than we do, than our incoming biosolids. So the material's not all that different from what we process. And in the past, we were able to kind of bring that through our process at our kind of our own rate. Once it's out of the lagoon and into those socks, I guess there's not much urgency to processing it.
Yeah, and we have a question from Director Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Is the material suitable for, we usually turn our biosolids into Skyrocket. Is the composition and kind of water content appropriate for that, of what Cumberland produces?
Yeah, in the past it has been. I think if we were to proceed with this, it would be subject to the material being tested and meeting the same criteria that our own incoming biosolids do. Yes.
And is there we've done this in the past. Is this the first, or will this be the first time we've done this?
No, so we did process, we have processed this type of material from Cumberland in the past. It's been a number of years. It's been, I think, about 9 years. Mm-hmm. But yes, so we do have some experience.
Director Hillian?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious first of all, thanks for explaining the process. I was trying to imagine how this actually happens and decided to stop going down that trail. I'm just curious, what sort of financial back and forth is involved in this arrangement, if any?
Like compensation, you mean? Or
Yeah, is there any, does Cumberland have to pay for this, or do we do it as a service?
No, I guess our assumption is that Cumberland would definitely pay for the service. So we would, if you, not sure, several of you would have been here during the last term when we agreed to process biosolids from Ladysmith. So they had a gap between the completion of their new facility and their old one. So we undertook an analysis and developed a unit rate which represented a fair value, a compensation to us for the effort of processing it. Essentially dividing the total number of tons processed over the year into our operating costs.
Fair enough, thanks.
Yeah.
And Mr. Dyson, you have some insight into that?
Sure. If you wish, you could direct staff to prepare a report that looks at full cost recovery and the conditions that might be imposed in such an agreement and bring that back for your consideration.
Okay. All those in favor of receipt of the report, and you might as well stay there just in case, but Director Hillian, are you happy to move that we get that report?
Always right to move that.
Okay, and seconded, okay. Are there any more questions? I actually had some thoughts about the system in general up in Cumberland, but I guess it's neither here nor there. If we're just contemplating taking their sewage, I was wondering the future for this, but it seems like the neighborly thing to do, and when we get that report, we can see if it's cost effective as well. So there's no more questions. All those in favor of the report? And that's unanimous. Thanks very much. And where does that take us to? We're off to the in-camera section. All those in favor of going in camera after this? Thank you. That's unanimous. And I guess that's it. I guess we'll slide right into in camera. Thanks very much. And I guess everyone's staying, or you guys have. We'll see you afterwards.